The story begins in the rugged Wyoming Territory during the late 1880s, a time when the frontier tested every soul with its harsh winters, unforgiving land, and the constant pressure to prove one's worth through strength, practicality, and unyielding labor. In the small settlement of Providence, nestled against rolling hills and vast open plains, lived a young woman named Laura, barely 18 years old. She had already known more loss than most people experience in a lifetime. Her mother had succumbed to a fever when Laura was still a child, leaving behind a quiet grief that never fully faded. Her father, a dreamer and amateur geologist of sorts, had perished in a reckless expedition into the mountains, chasing rumors of hidden mineral veins that never materialized. With both parents gone, Laura found herself orphaned and cast out from the modest family cabin that now belonged to distant relatives who saw no use for an extra mouth to feed in the approaching cold season. She possessed little more than the clothes on her back, a threadbare dress patched at the elbows and knees, and a small canvas lean-to she had rigged on the edge of town. The townsfolk viewed her with a mix of pity and growing impatience. At first, the pastor's wife brought her scraps of bread and kind words, but as autumn deepened and resources grew scarce, those gestures turned to murmurs of judgment. "She's a liability," they whispered. "Charity has its limits when winter howls at the door." Among the most vocal critics was Silas Blackwood, the town's master builder, a burly man with calloused hands and a philosophy rooted in solid, visible permanence. He constructed sturdy log cabins with thick walls, iron stoves, and roofs that could withstand heavy snow. To him, Lara's situation symbolized weakness, someone who relied on others instead of building something enduring with her own two hands. He offered her a spot in the church attic once, but it came laced with condescension, as if her very existence challenged his ordered world of straight beams and nailed joints. Laura, however, carried something the others could not see. Her father's old journals, filled with sketches and notes about the land as a living entity. He wrote of earth lungs that breathed warmth from deep within, stone tides that regulated temperature far more reliably than any man-made fire, and hidden fissures where the planet's internal heat leaked upward like a gentle pulse. One page in particular caught her eye, a rough map marking a hill north of town with a bold X and the words, "The Hill That Breathes." Desperate as the first frosts bit at her lean-to and her meager supplies dwindled, Laura decided to follow that faded ink. She gathered what little she had, a battered lantern, a shovel borrowed from a sympathetic neighbor, some rope, and dried provisions, and set out on foot toward the hill. The journey was grueling. The wind whipped across the open terrain, carrying the scent of pine and distant snow. When she reached the northern face of the hill, it looked unremarkable at first. A rocky outcrop dotted with scrub brush, no different from 100 other slopes in the territory. But as she probed the crevices, a faint current of air brushed her face, temperate, neither icy nor scorching, carrying a subtle earthy musk. She widened a narrow gap with her shovel, her hands blistering quickly from the hard labor. Days blurred into one another as she crawled deeper, scraping away loose stone and soil, her body aching from the awkward positions. Children from town spied on her from afar, giggling and spreading rumors that the orphan girl was digging her own grave, a madwoman preparing a tomb before the White Death winter claimed her. Whispers reached Blackwood, who rode out one afternoon on his sturdy horse to confront her. "This is foolishness, girl," he barked, his voice echoing off the rocks. "That crack will collapse on you, and we'll be burying whatever's left come spring. Come back to town, the church has space." Laura paused, wiping sweat and dirt from her brow, and replied quietly but firmly that her father had understood the land better than any builder. She refused his offer and kept digging. Progress was slow and painful. At times the passage narrowed so much she had to wriggle forward on her belly, lantern light flickering against damp walls. Her fingers bled, her knees bruised, and hunger gnawed constantly. Yet something kept her going. The memory of her father's voice describing how the earth held secrets for those willing to listen rather than conquer. Around the 40th foot mark, the character of the tunnel changed dramatically. The rock softened slightly, laced with natural fissures, and a steady flow of warmer air enveloped her. She held her hand to the stone and felt it, 75 degrees Fahrenheit, consistent and gentle, like the breath of something ancient and alive. No draft from the surface could explain it. This was geothermal warmth rising from deeper strata, stable year-round where surface temperatures plummeted to 50 below zero during blizzards. The discovery electrified her. Here was not just shelter but a natural furnace that required no constant wood hauling or risky open flames. With renewed energy, Lara expanded the space carefully, shoring up walls with packed earth and flat stones she dragged inside. She designed her dwelling with principles her father had outlined, using the Earth's thermal mass for insulation and heat storage. She created a subfloor plenum, a channel system where the warm air from the fissures could circulate beneath raised flooring made of split logs and packed clay. Smoke from a small cooking fire would travel through a winding, extended chimney carved along the floor, surrendering its heat to the surrounding rock before venting far away through a secondary fissure, ensuring the interior stayed smoke-free and evenly warmed. The main living area became a cozy burrow, roughly 10 feet wide at its broadest, with niches carved for storage and sleeping. She insulated the entrance with layers of sod and brush, making it nearly invisible from outside while allowing controlled ventilation. Chickens, brought in a makeshift crate on her next supply run, found a warm corner to roost, their eggs providing precious protein. She even managed a small baking setup using the stable heat for slow, efficient bread making without wasting fuel. Meanwhile, in town, preparations for winter proceeded in the conventional way. Blackwood oversaw the construction of several new cabins, each with massive log walls, heavy stoves, and stockpiles of split wood. His own home, the finest in Providence, featured thick insulation and a roaring hearth. The community mocked Lara's absence, calling her burrow the mad girl's hole and betting on how long she would last before crawling back begging for mercy. As October gave way to November, the first heavy snows fell, blanketing the hills in white silence. Then came the historic blizzard locals later named the White Death, a ferocious storm that dropped temperatures to depths rarely seen, with winds that howled like banshees and snowdrifts that buried fences and trails. Conventional cabins struggled. Drafts seeped through even the tightest chinks, cold spots formed away from the stoves, and wood consumption skyrocketed as families huddled under frosted blankets, feeding the fires constantly just to keep frostbite at bay. Blackwood's family suffered alongside the rest, his children whimpered from the chill, and his wife Sarah rationed the dwindling logs with growing fear in her eyes. Silas himself, once so confident in his sturdy builds, lay awake at night listening to the wind, regretting nothing outwardly but feeling the weight of doubt creep in. Lara's burrow, by contrast, remained a haven of quiet comfort. The geothermal flow maintained an even 75 degrees throughout, radiating from floors and walls like a living radiator. No frantic wood chopping was needed. A small, efficient fire supplemented the natural heat when necessary, and the thermal battery of the surrounding rock held warmth for days even if the vent was temporarily blocked by snow. She tended her chickens, baked simple loaves, and read passages from her father's journals by lantern light, feeling a profound connection to the land that had once seemed so hostile. The storm raged outside for days, but inside, time moved differently, peaceful, sustainable, almost meditative. On the third day of the blizzard's peak, Blackwood could take no more. Wrapping himself in every layer he owned, he fought through the drifts toward the hill, half expecting to find Lara's frozen body at the entrance as a grim validation of his views. Instead, he spotted a thin wisp of smoke curling from a cleverly hidden pipe outlet. The entrance, though snow-covered, felt warm to the touch when he cleared it. Crawling inside on hands and knees, he emerged into the burrow and stood stunned. The air was mild and fresh, the space orderly and dry. Lara sat calmly by a low fire, stirring a pot of broth made from foraged roots and a bit of preserved meat. Chickens clucked softly in their nook. How, was all Blackwood could manage, his voice hoarse from the cold and disbelief. Lara offered him a bowl of broth and a slice of warm bread, then explained with quiet patience. She spoke of her father's ideas. The Earth's average subsurface temperature hovering around 50 to 55 degrees as a baseline, enhanced here by geothermal vents acting as a free, infinite heat source. Thermal mass absorbed and released energy slowly, unlike air that cooled rapidly. Insulation prevented loss, while careful ventilation avoided dampness or smoke buildup. It was not magic, she said, but listening to the land instead of fighting it. Blackwood listened, humbled for the first time in years. The contrast was undeniable. His permanent structures had nearly failed his family, while this unconventional burrow thrived. Over the following hours, as the storm continued to howl, he asked questions, absorbing lessons on plenum systems, heat exchangers, and respecting natural constants over flashy construction. When the blizzard finally subsided, he returned to town not as a critic but as a changed man. He publicly recounted his visit, admitting his error in judging Laura and her methods. Word spread quickly. Survivors from other cabins, faces gaunt from cold and worry, began visiting the hill. Laura shared her knowledge generously, demonstrating how to identify similar fissures, how to integrate them into earth-sheltered designs, and how to build with thermal efficiency in mind. Soon, families started modifying existing homes or constructing new, era homes, named affectionately after her, burrowed partially into hillsides with geothermal enhancements where possible. The town adapted, blending Blackwood's solid framing with Lara's earth-integrated wisdom, creating dwellings far more resilient to the territory's brutal seasons. In the years that followed, Lara transformed from the cast-out orphan into a respected figure whose insight helped the community endure future hardships. Blackwood became her unlikely ally and student, often working alongside her to refine techniques and teach others. The hill that once seemed a place of desperation became a symbol of ingenuity and harmony with nature. Children who had once mocked her now learned from her example. Decades later, an elderly Silas Blackwood would sit with his grandson in the original burrow, still warm and functional after all that time, and recount the tale. "We thought we knew how to build against the cold," he would say, his voice thick with reflection. "But she taught us the earth builds better when we let it help." This narrative illustrates more than mere survival, it speaks to the power of unconventional thinking when conventional wisdom falls short. Lara's journey from rejection to revelation highlights how desperation can uncover hidden truths about the world around us. The crevice, initially a desperate refuge, revealed a stable geothermal resource that challenged the town's reliance on finite wood and fragile structures. At 40 feet in, the warm rock did not just provide physical comfort. It shifted perspectives, proving that true strength often lies in adaptation rather than domination. Her father's journals, dismissed by many as the ramblings of a failed dreamer, became the foundation for a small revolution in frontier living. Expanding on the themes, consider the broader context of life in the late 19th century American West. Winters in Wyoming Territory could be merciless, with blizzards isolating communities for weeks and claiming lives through exposure or starvation when supplies ran low. Traditional log cabins, while sturdy against wind and predators, demanded enormous labor for heating. Wood had to be cut, hauled, and stacked in vast quantities, and even then, inefficiencies like poor insulation and rising heat loss meant constant vigilance. Families often suffered respiratory issues from smoke or frostbite from uneven warmth. Lara's approach, by contrast, leveraged passive solar, passive geothermal, principles that modern earth-sheltered architecture would later validate. The consistent subsurface temperature acts as a natural thermostat, reducing energy needs dramatically. Her plenum and heat exchange chimney demonstrated early understanding of thermodynamics. Moving air and mass to transfer and store energy efficiently without waste. Psychologically, the story delves into resilience and community dynamics. Being cast out at 18 stripped Lara of security, forcing self-reliance that many never develop. The initial mockery she faced reflects how societies often resist innovation that threatens established norms. Blackwood embodied the craftsman who equates visible effort with value, overlooking subtler, smarter solutions. Her refusal of easy charity and commitment to her father's vision showcase quiet determination. The turning point during the blizzard underscores redemption. Blackwood's humility allowed growth, and Lara's generosity in sharing prevented bitterness from taking root. In helping others indirectly through her example, she built something lasting, not just a home, but a legacy of knowledge. Environmentally, the tale carries a timeless message. Rather than extracting resources aggressively, Lara harmonized with the landscape. The hill breathed warmth because of natural geology. By working with fissures and thermal mass, she minimized impact while maximizing benefit. This contrasts with over-reliance on timber, which could lead to deforestation in frontier areas. Her small garden plots and animal integration hinted at closed-loop systems, where waste from one element nourishes another, fostering sustainability long before the term existed. On a deeper level, the discovery at 40 feet represents a metaphor for exploration, of both the physical world and inner potential. Many face moments of being cast out, whether literally through family rejection, job loss, or personal crisis. Crawling into the unknown, enduring discomfort, often yields unexpected stability. Lara did not find gold or treasure in the conventional sense, she uncovered reliability in nature's constants, a far more valuable asset in an unpredictable world. The warm rock changed everything because it reframed her identity from victim to innovator, and by extension, influenced an entire settlement. As the community adopted hybrid building methods, Providence likely became more resilient, with fewer losses in subsequent winters. Lara's life evolved into one of quiet influence, perhaps marrying, raising children versed in earth knowledge, or simply continuing to experiment with the land. Blackwood's transformation from antagonist to advocate illustrates how confrontation with superior ideas can humble even the proudest. The elderly recounting to his grandson closes the circle, passing wisdom across generations: question assumptions, listen to the land, and value unconventional paths.